I'm Vincent, 42 male. I'm a real estate developer in Manhattan. For the last 10 years, my life has been a highlight reel of success, culminating in a $13 million penthouse overlooking the city I was convinced I had conquered. It was all built on a foundation of hard work, ambition, and what I believed was an unshakable partnership with my wife, Bianca. But 3 days ago, that foundation didn't just crack, it was revealed to be a hollow facade. Now, my entire world is collapsing, and it all started with a revelation that rewrites every memory I cherish. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. 3 days before my life imploded, I was on top of the world. I was standing in my corner office, 40 floors above Central Park, watching the sun set over the skyline. The glass reflected a man who had everything, Vincent Harley, the developer who just closed the biggest deal of his career. The signatures from the Garrison Group are in, Vincent, my assistant Jennifer said, placing the finalized contracts on my desk. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wide with the sheer scale of it. Congratulations, the Tribeca development project is officially yours. 5 years of negotiations, zoning battles, and sleepless nights had finally paid off. It was a $200 million deal that wouldn't just build luxury residences. It would cement my family's name in a city that had once discarded it. My father, William Harley, had been a cautionary tale, a smart man ruined by a Ponzi scheme who died of a heart attack 2 years later, his reputation in tatters. I had spent the last decade clawing my way back, not just to rebuild our fortune but to erase the stain of his failure. This deal did it. I was no longer William Harley's son. I was Vincent Harley. My first call, of course, was to Bianca. She answered with that crisp, cultured accent she'd never lost from her supposed Boston Brahmin upbringing. "Hello, darling." "We did it, B. We actually did it," I said, unable to keep the triumph from my voice. Garrison signed. The Tribeca project is a go, 200 million. There was a beat of silence on the other end, not the explosion of joy I expected, but a measured pause. "That's wonderful, Vincent, truly. Actually," she added, her tone shifting, "that's perfect timing. We need to talk when you get home." A chill I couldn't explain snaked down my spine, but I brushed it off. Talk about what? Should I grab some champagne, book a table at Percy? "Just come home, Vincent, we'll talk then." The line clicked dead. The strange, flat quality of her voice should have been a red flag, a screaming siren, but I was invincible. I was the man who had just conquered Manhattan. What could possibly go wrong? Bianca had always been the biggest surprise of my life. 10 years ago, she'd walked into my life and fundamentally altered its trajectory. I was at my mother's annual Manhattan Arts Foundation gala, standing on a stage at the plaza as Bachelor number 12. I was still grinding, still trying to get my first major project off the ground, and I'd only agreed to be auctioned off for a dinner date as a favor to my mother, Dorothy. The bidding started at $500. A few paddles went up, polite gestures from women my mother knew. My brother Tommy, who was Bachelor number 11 and had gone for a respectable $3,000, was laughing at me from the side. Then a voice cut through the ballroom, clear and confident as a ringing bell. $50,000. The room went dead silent. 300 heads turned to the back. There she was. A woman in a black Versace gown, her dark hair pulled back. She held her paddle high, not with arrogance but with absolute certainty. "Did she say 50? Tommy whispered, his jaw slack. "Vinny, that woman just bought you like a prized racehorse." My mother was already buzzing, rushing to the event coordinator. "Who is she? Do we know her?" "Bianca Thornwell," the coordinator whispered back. "New to New York, from Boston, the Thornwells. Harvard MBA, just started a high-level position at Goldman Sachs." Our first date was at Le Bernardin. She ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my apartment's rent and proceeded to dissect my entire 5-year plan. She'd done her homework. "You're going to own this city, Vincent Harley," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "I can see it, you're not your father." No one had ever spoken about my father's ruin with such brutal, pity-free honesty. "How do you know about my father?" I asked, thrown off balance. She smiled, a slow, captivating smile. "I do my research. I don't bid $50,000 on anything or anyone without knowing exactly what I'm buying." I was mesmerized. She was brilliant, beautiful, and she saw the man I wanted to be, not the wreckage I came from. 6 months. Later, I was on one knee at the Rainbow Room, holding a 3-carat diamond I had liquidated nearly all my savings to buy. She said yes before I even got the words out. Our wedding was the society event of the season. 300 guests at the St. Regis, flowers flown in from Holland. It was my mother's victory lap, a declaration that the Harleys were back. My uncle, Clarence Harley, my mother's brother and a federal judge with a 30-year reputation for being able to spot a lie from a mile away, pulled me aside at the reception. "She's solid gold, Vincent," he said, clapping me on the shoulder, his usual judicial skepticism gone. "I've spent my life looking at liars in my courtroom. That girl is the real deal, she's good for you." For 10 years I believed him. We were the ultimate power couple. We built an empire, or so I thought. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue, the beach house in the Hamptons, she was my partner in everything. Her investment strategies, she claimed, had doubled our portfolio. When I brought up starting a family, she'd always smile and touch my face. "Let's build the empire first, darling, then our family," she'd say. "I want our children to have everything, to never, ever have to worry about money the way you did." It made perfect sense. Everything about our life made perfect, logical sense. Until 3 days ago, when I walked into our penthouse after closing the biggest deal of my life, and the woman I'd loved for a decade looked at me like I was a stranger. I stepped out of the private elevator directly into our penthouse foyer. The silence was the first thing that hit me. Usually I'd be greeted by music, jazz, classical, something to fill the cavernous space. Tonight, there was nothing but the faint scent of Bianca's Joe Malone candles, which seemed sharper, almost sterile. She was in the living room, silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed our billion-dollar view of Central Park. The sunset was painting the room in hues of orange and purple, but the light felt cold, artificial. She was perfectly composed, wearing a cream cashmere dress, her hair immaculate. On the coffee table between us sat 2 wine glasses, empty, and a thick manila folder. "Sit down, Vincent," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I was used to. She motioned to the Italian leather sofa across from her, not the spot beside her where we always sat. I loosened my tie, my stomach twisting. The high from the Tribeca deal was evaporating, replaced by a creeping dread. You're scaring me. What's going on? Are you sick? Is it your mother?" "I'm perfectly healthy, Vincent. So is my mother." She pushed the manila folder across the table. Her hand was perfectly steady, her manicure flawless. I opened it. The first page was a legal document, petition for dissolution of marriage. My eyes scanned the words, but my brain refused to assemble them into a coherent thought. "Divorce? Bianca, what is this? What happened? Is there someone else? Whatever it is, we can fix it. We can go to counseling, we can." She laughed. It wasn't her bright champagne laugh from parties or the warm, private chuckle she saved for me. It was a sound I had never heard before, a sharp, metallic, utterly mirthless sound that cut me to the bone. "Oh, Vincent," she said, shaking her head slowly. "Sweet, naive, oblivious Vincent. There was never someone else because there was never really an us." I don't understand." She stood up and walked to the window, clasping her hands behind her back. "Do you remember the night we met? The charity gala?" "Of course I remember. It was the start of everything." "No," she said, turning to face me. Her eyes were not the eyes of the woman I loved. They were cold, assessing like a banker looking at a balance sheet. "It was the start of a bet." My blood ran cold, as a bet. A wager, to be precise. My final semester at Harvard Business School. A few friends and I in my cohort, Charlotte, Madison, Alexandra, we made a bet. The challenge was elegantly simple: marry someone with a net worth of at least $10 million. Stay married for exactly 10 years, long enough for the prenup clauses to expire and maximize the divorce settlement. Then walk away with half. The winner got bragging rights and a case of vintage Dom Perignon. The words were English, but the meaning was impossible. It felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. You're telling me our entire 10-year marriage, our life, was for a case of champagne?" "Don't be so dramatic, Vincent. It was never about the champagne," she said dismissively. "It was about proving a point, that love is just a chemical reaction, a social construct. That marriage is just another, more complicated business transaction. And that anyone can be manipulated if you just understand their core weaknesses." "My weaknesses," I whispered, the word feeling like ash in my mouth. She walked Ed back and sat on the edge of the coffee table, leaning in as if explaining a complex financial derivative to a child. "You were the perfect mark, so much ambition but so deeply insecure, desperate to prove you weren't your father, desperate for the approval of Manhattan society, the same people who had whispered about your family's downfall. You were handsome, which made the decade tolerable. You were smart enough to actually build the fortune I needed you to build. But you were just naive enough, just hungry enough for the love and validation I was offering, that you never saw what was right in front of you." She pulled out her phone, her thumb moving expertly across the screen. She turned it and showed me a group text, dated 10 years and 3 months ago. Madison B is actually doing it. 50K on a random developer, she's certifiable. Alexandra, 10 years is a long time to keep up a lie even for you. Charlotte, he's kind of cute. But 10 years, Bianca, trust me girls, it's a blue chip investment. Vincent Harley is driven by demons. He's going to make us all very, very rich. 10 years from now, I'll be set for life and you'll all owe me that dom. I felt physically ill, a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the sofa. Everything, every I love you, every anniversary. Not everything had to be faked, she said, almost kindly, which was somehow worse. I'm not a sociopath, Vincent. I enjoyed the lifestyle, the travel, the status, the penthouse. You were a pleasant companion, devoted, attentive. It made the job much easier. My mother, I choked out, my mind grasping for something, anything that was real. When my mother had cancer 2 years ago, you sat with her through her chemo. You held her hand. You cried with her. I'm a very good actress, Vincent, she said, her expression unchanging. Tears on command were part of my skill set long before Harvard. It was a convincing performance, wasn't it? Our trip to Paris for my 40th, you said it was the happiest week of your life. The hotel was exquisite. The shopping on the Champs-Élysées was divine. I finally stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of concrete. The penthouse, my fortress, was tilting around me. The prenup, my lawyers, they said it was ironclad. It was, she agreed. For the first 5 years, absolutely. The clauses weakened significantly after that, and after 10 years, they're essentially meaningless. Your lawyer was good, mine was just better. I've been planning this exact exit strategy since before I knew your name. The timeline was everything. She gestured to the hallway, where I now saw, for the first time, 3 large Louis Vuitton suitcases lined up perfectly by the elevator door. I'll be at the Carlisle. My lawyer will be in touch with yours in the morning. She walked past me, her perfume washing over me, a scent I used to associate with comfort, now the smell of deceit. Bianca, please, I begged, the word tearing from my throat. 10 years, how can you just do this? She paused with her hand on the elevator button. She looked back, not with anger or even pity, but with a kind of detached curiosity. You know what the truly funny part is, Vincent? You never once questioned it. A beautiful, wealthy, Harvard-educated woman from one of Boston's top families bids $50,000 on a struggling developer at a charity auction, and you just accepted it. You thought it was fate. Your ego made my job so incredibly easy. You wanted so badly to believe you were the kind of man who deserved a woman like me that you never, ever stopped to ask why I chose you. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. The papers are already filed, she said, her voice echoing slightly from the car. With the Tribeca deal closed, your liquid assets are at their peak. The timing, as I said, is perfect. Goodbye, Vincent. The brushed steel doors slid shut with a soft, final thud that echoed through the $13 million tomb she had built for me. For 48 hours, I ceased to exist. The penthouse became my prison. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I just moved. I drifted from room to room, picking up objects that now felt like stage props. The crystal vase we bought in Venice. The art book from our trip to the Met. Each one was a monument to a lie. I'd sit on our sofa for hours, staring at the skyline, watching the city I thought I owned move on without me, indifferent to the fact that my entire reality had been a fabrication. The woman I loved didn't exist. She was a character, a role played by a stranger for a decade. The partnership I thought was building an empire was just a long, meticulously planned corporate extraction. I wasn't a husband, I was a mark. I was a 10-year investment that had finally matured. On the second day, Tommy used his spare key to get in. He found me in my study, sitting in the dark, surrounded by 10 years of photo albums and financial stadium. NTS, I was trying to forensically dissect our life, searching for a clue I had missed. Vinny, Jesus, he said, flicking on the lights. The sudden brightness made me wince. You look like hell. When did you last eat? What's going on? He pushed aside a stack of bank statements and perched on my desk. Did you know? My voice was a dry rasp. Did anyone suspect anything ever? No, what, Vinny, what are you talking about? She left me, Tommy, it was all a bet, our whole marriage, 10 years. It was a bet she made with her college friends. Tommy's face went from confusion to disbelief, then to a dark, rising anger. A bet? What the hell are you? That's insane, nobody does that. She did, I said, my voice hollow. She planned it for 10 years, waited until the prenup expired right after the Tribeca deal closed. She's taking half of everything. We'll fight this, Tommy said, his voice hard. We'll get lawyers, we'll prove fraud, a marriage under false pretenses. Prove what? I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. That she didn't love me? How do you put that in a legal brief? She'll say it was a stupid joke from college, that I'm misremembering, that feelings change. She's smarter than this, Tommy. She's been planning this for a decade. She's not going to get tripped up by a fraud claim. An hour later, my mother arrived. Tommy must have called her. She came in carrying a container of homemade soup, her eyes red-rimmed. Dorothy Harley, a woman who had faced my father's public disgrace and her own cancer diagnosis with unshakable composure, looked utterly shattered. I introduced you, she whispered, sinking into the chair opposite me. At my gala, I pushed you two together. I told everyone how perfect she was. This is my fault, Vincent. It's not your fault, Mom, I said, the words tasting like sawdust. She targeted me. If it wasn't at your gala, she would have found another way. She's a professional. But how could we not see, she cried, the tears finally falling. 10 years, Vincent, she sat at our Thanksgiving table. She held my hand at the hospital. How can a person fake all of that? That was the question. It was the only question. It hammered at my skull hour after hour. How? That night, long after Tommy and my mother had left, I found myself in the living room. It was 2 a.m. The city was a glittering carpet of light below. I opened my laptop, and for reasons I still don't understand, I put in our wedding video. Maybe I was a masochist. Maybe I was looking for the cracks, the moment the mask slipped, the one micro-expression that would prove she was lying. The video started, preparations at the St. Regis, Bianca, laughing with her bridesmaids, looking like the happiest woman alive. Me adjusting Tommy's boutonniere, my face split in a grin of pure idiotic joy. Relax, Vinny, video Tommy said. She's not going anywhere. The irony was so thick I felt like I was choking on it. Then the ceremony, the ballroom, the flowers, the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, Bianca walking down the aisle, her eyes fixed on me, glistening with what I had sworn were tears of love. I watched myself at the altar, looking at her like she was my salvation. And in a way, she was. She was the one who had, I thought, redeemed my father's name and validated my own struggle. I was about to shut the laptop, unable to take any more, when I noticed something. During our vows, as the camera panned across the guests, it caught someone in the back corner. A man. He wasn't sitting. He was standing near an exit, partially obscured by a floral arrangement. He was holding a professional-looking video camera, filming us. I frowned. He wasn't our videographer. I'd hired a high-end team and they were at the front. He wasn't our photographer. He was just there. A man in a plain, functional black suit that screamed off-the-rack government employee. I paused the video. I zoomed in. The image became grainy, but the man's face was clear enough. Mid-40s, tired eyes, a look of profound boredom. His camera was different. It wasn't a wedding camera. It looked more functional, less artistic. I went frame by frame. As he shifted, the light caught a label on the side of his camera. My heart stopped. The letters were partially obscured, but I could make them out. NYPD evidence. Below it, a case number. Younger 2014 7739. The air left my lungs. Why would a cop be filming my wedding with an evidence camera? My hands were shaking. I scrubbed through the entire 4-hour video. He appeared 13 different times, always in the background, always watching, always filming. In one shot from the cocktail hour, as he turned, I saw it, a clear glimpse of a badge clipped to his belt. I grabbed my phone and called Tommy. Vinny, it's 2:30 in the morning, he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Get back here, I said. Get back here right now, you need to see this. He arrived 20 minutes later, wearing sweatpants and a coat. I didn't say a word, just pointed at the screen, at the zoomed-in image of the man. What the hell? Tommy leaned in, squinting. Who is this guy? One of the guests. He's a cop, Tommy. He was filming our wedding with an evidence camera. That's impossible. Why? Before I could answer, my phone, sitting on the desk between us, buzzed. Unknown number. At 2:47 a.m., nothing good comes from an unknown number. I stared at it. Tommy nodded. Answer it, put it on speaker. I hit the buttons. Hello. A voice came through, gravelly and exhausted, like a man who ran on cigarettes and stale coffee. Mr. Vincent Harley. Who is this? My name is Roland Keir. I'm a retired FBI agent. I heard about your divorce filing through channels. I think it's time you and I had a conversation. A conversation about what? About your wife, Mr. Harley. About why I was at your wedding 10 years ago filming everything. And he paused. About the $30 million she stole before she ever even met you. The penthouse, which had felt like a tomb for 2 days, suddenly felt like a crime scene. Tommy and I just stared at the phone, the silence on the line stretching for an eternity before I found my voice. What did you just say? Your wife isn't who you think she is, Mr. Harley, Roland Keir's voice crackled. Her real name isn't Bianca Thornwell, it's Bianca Martinelli. And 10 years ago, she was the primary suspect in one of the biggest investment fraud cases in Boston history. We could never make it stick. I looked at Tommy, his face was pale. So you've been watching us, I asked, my mind struggling to connect the dots. For 10 years. Watching her, Keir corrected. You were just collateral observation, an unlucky guy who got caught in her orbit, but now she's making her move. Filing for divorce, timing it perfectly to take your legitimate money and mix it with her illegitimate fortune. Well, now you're not just collateral, Mr. Harley. You're our best and maybe last chance to finally nail her. The bet, the 10-year lie, it was all cruel, devastating, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a federal crime. The $50,000 bid at the auction, it wasn't just a flashy move to hook a mark. It was a flex, a con artist spending her stolen money. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I want to meet, Keir said, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Queens Boulevard Diner Inn. You guessed it, Queens. It's a dump, but the coffee's hot and nobody listens. Come alone. Bring that wedding video you were just watching. How did you know? I've been waiting 10 years for this call, son. I know a lot of things. Oh, and one more piece of advice. Before you meet me, do yourself a favor. Check your Cayman Islands investment account. The one Bianca insisted you open for tax purposes about 5 years ago. I think you'll find it very educational. The line went dead. Tommy and I looked at each other. Vinny, he said, his voice low, this is way beyond a bet. It took me less than 5 minutes to log into the Cayman account. Bianca had always handled it. She said it was too complex, that it was her area of expertise, a way to legally and aggressively shelter our shared income. I trusted her. I was the builder, she was the financial wizard. I opened the transaction history, expecting to see the large, intermittent deposits from my development deals, just as she'd explained. Instead, I saw something else. For 5 years, there had been a steady stream of small, seemingly random deposits. $15,000 here, $28,000 there, $9,000, all from different shell corporations with nonsense names, and corresponding withdrawals just as small, moving to other accounts. It was a flurry of activity that made no sense. But when I looked at the bigger picture, I saw the pattern. The original $30 million Keir mentioned, she'd been laundering it. She'd been washing her stolen money from Boston through my accounts, mixing it with my legitimate earnings. Oh my God, I breathed. Tommy, she's been using me. She's been cleaning her dirty money with my clean money for years. And now she's divorcing you, Tommy finished, the horrifying realization dawning on him. She'll take half, but her half won't just be your money. It'll be her laundered money, now legally declared clean by a New York divorce court. It's brilliant. I'm implicated, I said, the floor dropping out from under me. The IRS, the FBI, they're going to think I was her partner. Not if you meet this Keir guy, Tommy said, grabbing my coat. You're not her partner, you're her victim. The next morning, I was in Queens. The diner was every crime movie cliché rolled into one, cracked vinyl booths, the smell of burnt coffee and old grease. Roland Keir was exactly the man from the video, just 10 years oldie. R with the mileage of 1,000,000 bad days carved into his face. He was in a back booth, nursing a black coffee. He stood when I approached, his handshake firm and dry. Mr. Harley, thanks for coming. He motioned for me to sit. Coffee, black, you. Same, I sat down, placing the USB drive with the wedding video on the Formica table. Start talking. He pulled a thick, weathered folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Bianca Martinelli, born in South Boston, not Beacon Hill. Father was a small-time bookie who got in over his head and was found in the trunk of a car when she was 10. Mother worked 3 jobs. The Harvard MBA is real, she got a full ride. Kid's a genius, but everything else, the family, the money, the name, all fabricated. He tapped the folder. We first got her on our radar in 2011. Boston PD, arrested for fraud. The charges were dropped when the 2 key witnesses suddenly disappeared, not dead, he clarified, just very, very well paid and relocated to Costa Rica. She was slick even then. The $30 million, I said, my voice hoarse. Ah yes, her masterpiece. He opened another file. 2013, she gets a job at Meridian Capital, a high-flying hedge fund in Boston, seduces the senior partner, a married guy named Marcus Webb, gets access to his passwords, his client lists, his entire digital life. Over 6 months, she bleeds the fund, siphons $30 million from various high-net-worth client accounts. She did it in such small increments that nobody noticed until the quarterly audit. By then, poof. She was gone, and you couldn't catch her. She's brilliant, Mr. Harley. Don't ever forget that, Keir said, taking a sip of his coffee. The money was routed through 17 different shell companies in 9 different countries before it landed in a black hole we couldn't crack. We knew she did it, but knowing and proving are two different worlds. Then 6 months later, she pops up in New York. New name, Bianca Thornwell, new background, and $50,000 in cash to bid on a handsome young developer at a charity auction. You knew it was her. You were at my weddings. He nodded, looking tired. We knew, but our hands were tied. We couldn't get a warrant based on a hunch, and then she married you. You with your rebuilt family name and, more importantly, your uncle, federal Judge Clarence Harley. You gave her the perfect cover. She was untouchable. Investigating the niece-in-law of a sitting federal judge without concrete, undeniable cause, political suicide. We were stuck. All we could do was watch and wait. Wait for what? For her to get greedy, or bored, or both, Keir said. And now she has. The divorce filing triggered an automatic financial review. We saw the Cayman account. We saw the pattern, the same one she used in Boston. She's been laundering the money through my accounts, I said flatly. Like a pro, Keir confirmed. Mixing her dirty $30 million with your clean $200 million. Over 10 years, she's cleaned almost all of it. And the most beautiful part, when she divorces you, she walks away with half of the combined pot as community property. That's $15 million of her own laundered money plus half of your legitimate fortune. She gets to walk away clean, rich, and free with the law protecting her. I felt sick, so I'm going to prison. Keir leaned forward, his tired eyes suddenly sharp, intense. Not if you cooperate. We don't want you, Harley. You're the biggest victim in this whole story. The IRS, the SEC, yeah, they're going to have a lot of questions about those Cayman accounts. You could get buried in legal fees for the rest of your life, even if you're innocent. Or you can help us. Help you how? You're going to call her, you're going to tell her you want to meet at the penthouse. Tell her you want to discuss the divorce terms amicably, that you're willing to negotiate to make it fast. She'll agree. She's arrogant right now. She thinks she's won. And when she gets there, Keir said, tapping his chest, you're going to be wearing a wire. You're going to get her to admit it. The fake name, the Boston fraud, the money laundering. We need her to say it, Vincent. Without that confession, she walks. The idea of seeing her again, of sitting in that room and pretending to be calm, felt impossible. My hands were shaking so hard I had to hide them under the table. She'll know, I said. You said it, she's brilliant. She's been lying to me for 10 years. She'll see it on my face. She'll know I'm acting. She will, Keir agreed, which wasn't the reassurance I was looking for. She'll know you're acting, hurt, devastated, broken, which you are. That's the one part of this you don't have to fake. She's expecting you to be a wreck. She's expecting you to beg. She's expecting the "how could you do this to me" speech. You're just going to add a few new topics to the conversation. He laid out the strategy. It was simple and at W. As terrifying, I wasn't to be an accuser. I was to be a man trying to understand the wreckage of his life. You don't go in hot, Keir instructed, his voice low and practiced. You're not a cop, you're a husband, you're confused, you say you've been digging, trying to make sense of it all, and you found things you don't understand. You found the Boston stuff, you found the name Martinelli. You ask her to explain it. She's arrogant, Vincent. She thinks she's already won. She'll want to brag. She'll want to explain just how much smarter she was than you, than everyone. That's what you're counting on. And if I do this, I asked, the words feeling heavy, the IRS, the Cayman accounts, I walk away clean. You're a cooperating witness. A victim. Will provide full immunity and testify on your behalf. The U.S. Attorney's Office wants her, not you. You're the key to putting her away and recovering $30 million in stolen assets. You give us Bianca Martinelli on a platter and we make your legal problems vanish. There was no choice. It was the only way to get my life back, or at least what was left of it. The next day, my penthouse was transformed. 2 FBI agents, a man and a woman in identical Navy suits, swept the apartment for bugs, ironic, considering they were about to plant their own. Keir was there, overseeing everything. They set up a mobile command unit in a van parked on the street 40 floors below. She'll be here at 3, I said, my voice hoarse. I'd called her that morning, playing the part of the defeated husband. I know you're angry, Vincent, but I'm glad you're being practical, she'd said, her voice smooth and professional. A messy fight only benefits the lawyers. I'll see you at 3. At 2:30, one of the agents, a serious woman who introduced herself as Agent Chen, fitted me with the wire. The tape was cold against my skin, a stark physical reminder of the betrayal. It's high sensitivity, Chen explained, her voice all business. You don't need to shout, just talk normally, we'll hear everything. Kier will be on the line with you. She handed me an earpiece so small it was almost invisible. This is one way, you'll be able to hear Mr. Kier if he needs to guide you, but don't react to his voice, understand? I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. You'll do fine, Kier said, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. Just remember, she's not your wife, she's the target. Get her talking about Boston, get her talking about the money, that's all that matters. The agents left, hiding in a utility stairwell down the hall. I was alone in the penthouse, the silence buzzing with tension. I stood by the window, looking down at the park, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure the wire was picking it up. Thump, thump, thump. A metronome counting down to the end of my life. I thought about the last 10 years, the dinners, the trips, the quiet Sunday mornings with the newspaper, her hand in mine at my mother's bedside. Was it all a performance, or was there any truth, any small piece of it that was real? I realized with a cold dread that I needed her to confess. I needed to hear it from her, not just from Kier. I needed to know one way or the other if any of it was real. The private elevator chimed, the doors slid open. And there she was, Bianca. She looked stunning as always. She was wearing a crisp white St. Laurent suit, armor for a corporate takeover. She looked relaxed, confident, and completely in control. She smiled, a small, polite smile, as if she were meeting a business associate for a slightly unpleasant negotiation. Vincent, she said, striding into the living room. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I knew you were too smart to drag this through the mud. Shall we sit? She moved to her favorite chair, the one she'd always read in, and crossed her legs, the picture of casual power. She was the predator and I was the prey. But for the first time, I knew the hunters were waiting just outside the door. I sat on the sofa across from her, the same spot where she had detonated my life just days before. I just want to understand, Bianca, I started, my voice shaking, which, as Kier predicted, was perfectly in character. I've been doing some digging, trying to make sense of everything. Understand what, Vincent? She asked, a little impatiently. It was a bet, I won, it's over. No, it's more than that, I said, leaning forward. I need to know, was any of it real? She sighed as if I were a tedious child. We went over this, I enjoyed the lifestyle, you were a kind companion, what more do you want? I want to know about Marcus Webb, I said. The change was instantaneous. It was subtle, but I saw it. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes went flat cold. The mask didn't slip, it hardened. I don't know who that is, she said, her voice dropping half a degree. Meridian Capital in Boston, I pooh. Shed, my heart pounding. I want to know about the $30 million you stole. I want to know. Who is Bianca Martinelli? The silence in the room was absolute. The only sound was the faint hum of the city 40 floors below. Bianca's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure cold calculation. She didn't look scared or cornered. She looked annoyed, bothered, like a CEO whose meticulously planned quarterly report had just been challenged by an intern. Where, she said, uncrossing her legs and placing her hands on her knees, did you hear that name? Does it matter? I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. I know Bianca Martinelli, I know about Boston, I know about the hedge fund. She stood up, not in a panic, but in a slow, deliberate motion. She walked to the bar, her back to me, and poured herself a glass of water from the crystal decanter, the one we bought in Venice on our anniversary. You, she said, still facing away, have been very busy. You didn't answer my question. Was any of it real, or was I just the second act? Was I just the money laundering part of the plan? She turned around, leaning against the bar. And then she did something I never expected. She smiled. A real, genuine smile tinged with what looked like respect. You really were the perfect mark, she said, shaking her head. So trusting, so eager, so good, I almost felt bad. You felt bad, I repeated, the wire on my chest feeling like a block of ice. Almost, she corrected. So you found out who told you, let me guess, that tired-looking old man who was at our wedding, the one who looked like he'd been sleeping in his suit, Roland Kier, am I right? My blood ran cold. You knew he was there. Of course I knew, she scoffed. You don't pull off what I did in Boston and not learn to spot a federal agent a mile away. I saw him the moment I walked into the ballroom. I knew they were watching. That's why I needed you, Vincent. You with your sterling, rebuilt reputation and your federal judge uncle. You were my insurance policy. They couldn't touch me as long as I was Mrs. Vincent Harley, niece of the Honorable Clarence Harley. It was brilliant. My mind was reeling. She hadn't just used me. She'd used my entire family as a human shield. The bet, I said, trying to piece it together. The bet with your friends. Was my cover story, she finished, taking a sip of water. It was real, don't get me wrong. My friends and I did make that wager, but it was also the perfect alibi for my new life. If anyone like Kier started sniffing around, what would they find? Not a fugitive, just a gold digger who made a cynical bet. It was the perfect misdirection. And you were just the price of admission. So the $30 million, you've been cleaning it through my accounts. And you've been signing the tax returns every year, Vincent, she said, her voice sharp. You're just as implicated as I am. You think you can go to the cops, you'll be in the cell right next to me. You've been my willing accessory for 5 years. That's why I'm being so generous, just taking half. It's my hush money. You stay quiet, you get to keep your buildings, you fight me. And I'll take you down with me. It was the confession, Kier had it, but I wasn't done. I needed to know for myself. 10 years, I said, my voice breaking for real this time. My mother, her cancer, you held her hand. Was that part of the act? Was that just performance? She hesitated. For the first time, the mask flickered. Her eyes softened just for a second, and she looked away out the window. You want the real truth, Vincent, she said, her voice quiet. The first 3 years were pure performance. I was playing a part. I was the perfect wife. I said the right things. I did the right things. I went through the motions. But you're not like Marcus Webb. You're kind. You're decent. You remembered my assistant's birthday. You treated waiters like human beings. You loved your mother. You loved your brother. And you were so good to me. She looked back at me, and I saw a glimpse of the woman I thought I'd married. Somewhere around year 4, she continued, the lines started to blur. By year 7, I'd catch myself forgetting it was fake. I'd wake up in the morning next to you and I'd feel safe, I'd feel happy. The woman who laughed with you in Paris, the woman who cried with your mother. That part was real, Vincent. I actually fell in love with you. Then why, I choked out, if you loved me, why go through with this? Why not just stop? Because the rest of it was real too, she said, her voice rising. The $30 million was real, the fraud was real, the lies were real. I'm 2 people, Vincent, and one of them is a criminal who was in too deep. How could I ever tell you? Hi, darling, I'm actually a federal fugitive who stole millions and I married you to launder it. What's for? Dinner eyes, I couldn't. So this, I gestured around the room, the divorce taking half. This is your exit strategy. It was the only way, she whispered. I couldn't just disappear. I loved you too much for that. I was going to do it legally. File for divorce, take my half, and let you go on with your life. It was the only way I could see to end it, to give you closure even if it destroyed you. She was backing toward the elevator, her composure cracking, tears welling in her eyes. You're wearing a wire, aren't you, Kier? He got to you. I had to know, Bianca, I said. I know, she whispered. The penthouse door burst open. It wasn't the elevator, it was the service entrance. Agents flooded in. Agent Chen and 2 others I didn't recognize. Roland Kier walked in behind them, his old blazer flapping. He looked tired, but for the first time he looked satisfied. Bianca Martinelli, he said, his voice echoing in the large room. You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. As Agent Chen put the cuffs on her, Bianca never took her eyes off me. Her face wasn't angry, it was just indescribably sad. Check the safe in my office, Vincent, she said, her voice just for me. The combination, it's our anniversary, our fake anniversary. And then she was gone. The agents led her out, and I was left standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by federal agents and the complete total wreckage of my life. That was 3 months ago. The fallout was swift and brutal, but in a way it was a clean burn. Bianca, faced with a mountain of evidence and my recorded testimony, knew she was trapped. Her high-priced lawyers, who I was apparently paying for, quickly negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. To avoid a trial that would have exposed every detail of her life and mine, she agreed to cooperate fully in recovering the stolen $30 million. She'll serve 5 years in a federal facility, possibly 3 with good behavior. As promised, Kier and the U.S. Attorney's Office held up their end of the bargain. I was treated as a victim and a cooperating witness. The IRS investigation into the Cayman accounts was quietly closed, my testimony and immunity protecting me from being an accomplice to her crimes. Our marriage was annulled on the grounds of fraud, which meant the 10-year prenup clause was void. She wasn't my wife. She was a con artist who had infiltrated my life. I kept my company, my assets, my projects. The Tribeca development was safe. A week after her arrest, I went to her office safe. My hands trembled as I entered the combination, our fake anniversary, 10/26, the date of the charity gala. Inside, there were only 2 items. The first was a small, velvet-covered ring box. It wasn't the 3-carat diamond I'd given her. It was a simple, elegant platinum band with a small, perfect sapphire. Inside, an inscription, VH, the real thing. The second was a letter, handwritten on her thick, cream-colored personal stationery. Oh, Vincent. If you are reading this, it means you know everything. The bet was real. The fraud in Boston was real. My name is fake. My background is a lie. The woman our friends know, the woman your family embraced, she never really existed. But I need you to know that some of it was real. The woman who loved quiet Sunday mornings with you and the newspaper, the woman who cried real tears when your mother got her cancer diagnosis, the woman who felt a genuine surge of pride when you closed your first big deal all on your own. She was real. I am two people, Vincent, and one of them loved you truly and completely. I'm sorry she wasn't strong enough to overcome the other one. I'm sorry I built our life on a foundation of lies. By the time I realized I loved you, I was already 5 years into the con and I didn't know how to get out. Please don't let this ruin you. You are a good man, Vincent Harley. You deserved a better woman. Please go find her. Well, Tommy thinks I'm crazy, but I visited her. Once, at the federal prison in Odysville, the woman I saw across the metal table was a stranger, dressed in a drab orange jumpsuit, her designer armor gone, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller. But her eyes were clearer than I had ever seen them. Why? It was the only question left. She looked down at her cuffed hands on the table. I grew up poor, not can't afford a pony poor, but roaches in the cereal box poor. My father was a bookie who ended up in a trunk. My mother worked 3 jobs and was invisible to the world. I was brilliant. I got a full scholarship to Harvard, but it didn't matter. I was still just trash from Southie. Marcus Webb, she continued, her voice low and steady, the man I stole from, he tried to assault me at a company party. When I threatened to report him, he laughed. He said nobody would ever believe me over him. He said I should be grateful for the attention, so I decided to take his money instead of justice. I took everything, and you were supposed to be my escape. Was I just another Marcus Webb? I asked. No, she said, finally looking up at me, her eyes wet. That was the problem. You were supposed to be just like him, a rich, entitled fool playing with his daddy's money. But then I got to know you. I learned about your father. I watched you rebuild your family's name from nothing. I watched how you treated your mother, your brother, you're kind to waiters, Vincent. You remember the doorman's name. You were everything he wasn't, and that made the lie so much harder to live with. Then why go through with it? Because by the time I knew I loved you, I was already a federal fugitive. What was I going to do? Confess? The truth would have destroyed you and sent me to prison. I was trapped. The divorce. It was the only way I could see to get out, to end the lie. A guard tapped the glass. Time was up. My mother still calls me every day. She stopped blaming herself. My uncle Clarence, on the other hand, retired from the bench 6 months early. If I could sit across from that woman at dinner for 10 years and not see it, he told me, then I have no business judging anyone ever again. My instincts are broken. Tommy helped me pack up the penthouse. It sold in a week for $15 million, too many ghosts, too many memories I couldn't trust. As we were packing the last boxes from the study, Tommy found our wedding album. You keeping this? I took it from him, I flipped it open. There we were, radiant and smiling. There was my family, so proud. And there in the background was Roland Keir watching it all. The Mark, the con, and the cop all in one happy photo. Yeah, I told Tommy, I'm keeping it, not all of it was a lie. The Tribeca development project is thriving. I renamed it Second Chances Plaza. Tommy says it's too sentimental, but I think Bianca would have understood the irony. I moved to a brownstone in Brooklyn. It's quiet. It has no memories. Roland Keir called me last week just to check in. You did good, son, he said. Can I ask you something, Roland? I said. All those years watching us, what did you see? He was quiet for a moment. I saw a woman at war with herself, Mr. Harley, the criminal and the wife fighting for control, and right up until the end, the wife was winning. The part that loved you was real, if that helps at all. I don't hate her, that's the strangest part. I hate what she did, I hate the deception, I hate that my life was a crime scene, but the woman herself, the one buried under all those lies, I think she was real, and I think she loved me. I was both her greatest victim and the only real thing in her fabricated life.